And welcome back to Ag Talk here in San Diego at the Ag Retailers Conference. Very happy to have with us the president and CEO of Cenex Harvest States. Carl Casale joins us, one of the presenters here at the conference. Carl, thank you for being with us. You know, a lot of questions as we wrap up 2012, a drought year. We saw reduced production, of course, due to the drought. But we know that demand continues to grow domestically as well as worldwide. And we see these numbers, 7 billion people going to go to 9 billion in the very near future, and questions about meeting that great demand. You're going to touch on that here today, kind of some perspective on the global outlook for agriculture. What do you see?
Yeah, I think that if you just take a look at it, the trends are inescapable. I just took my leadership team to China last month, and the one question we wanted to know is what's the rate of GDP growth going to be in China? Because I would argue that's going to define the success of U.S. agriculture. And I will tell you, if we were building skyscrapers, if we were selling luxury goods, I might be concerned. But for all of us that are in food production, you know, there'll be some ups and downs, but we are fundamentally in the right business. They are going to feed their people. And what's really interesting, and this is the first time they've been this open about it, that there is a very open social contract in China. The reason why there's a one-party government that's tolerated is because of jobs and food. And so long as they're all employed and so long as they're fed, they'll tolerate a one-party government. And if either of those conditions aren't met, then we're looking at probably something different. Well, if you're the one party that's in control and governing, you probably want people working and fed. It's not too complicated. And so I think that's going to, drive demand.
You know, when we talk about demand, you know, a lot of people say, can we sustain the kind of commodity prices we've seen? Now, we know the drought certainly had an impact on them and pushed them up some more, but when we project out, it would seem that when this market is demand-based now because of what you're saying, and I realize the United States is not the only supplier in the world, but still, when you're talking about that kind of demand, that seems to put a pretty strong floor under our agriculture and our commodity price.
I would totally agree, and we're going to see a world of who's good at what. Okay, U.S. is fundamentally advantaged in the production of corn. We can raise better corn than anybody in the world. We have the soils, we have the climate. We just can. And so what we're seeing now, farmers are investing in tiling. I mean, they're doing whatever they can to increase the productivity of that ground to meet that demand. We're good at beans, but so is Brazil. And Brazil's as good as beans as we are. So I would argue that beans are going to come in second to corn, as the market bids for commodities. And then I would argue that we're losing our position on wheat. And I don't even need to argue it. Just look at the math. U.S. is becoming a residual supplier or exporter of wheat to the world. Increasingly, it's going to be the Black Sea countries, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, that'll be providing feed wheat and milling quality wheat to the world because that's what they do well. So, I'm very encouraged by what I see from a productivity standpoint. And the great thing about farmers is, what do they in the U.S. What do they do when they have money? They reinvest in the productivity of the operation. And the other thing that I would say is kids coming home to farm. We haven't seen that in how many generations. In fact, we were talking earlier, I'll be really interested to see the next farm census. This could be the first time since the Civil War that we actually see an increase in on-farm population. Could be because of what we're seeing demographically, because it's a great place to be now.
Which is why issues like the estate tax and some of those things are so important to resolve them.
Absolutely. How you can cost-effectively transition these operations to the next generation becomes absolutely critical. And what's interesting, what you're seeing a lot of, it's not just kids coming home to farm with mom and dad. It's kids coming home to farm with grandpa and grandma. Because a lot of the folks of my generation, I graduated from college in 1983, we all left the farm because we had to, not because we wanted to. So we've almost lost a generation in production agriculture in this country that we need to rebuild. And I think that the current economics are certainly doing that.
Might be interesting not only to see if the numbers go up of farmers, but maybe the average age might come down some if that younger generation is indeed moving back to the farm.
Absolutely. And I think, we're probably already seeing that. But because of the way the USDA asks the question, who's the principal decision maker in the operation, I don't think it's necessarily accurately reflecting, who has already come back. So I think that has an effect of slowing the rate of decline in average farm age, but I believe that's already happening.
So you sound optimistic about moving forward with the future of agriculture, and whether or not we can maintain record farm incomes remains to be seen, but you sound optimistic.
My biggest regret is, or my biggest concern is, I've been doing this for 30 years. I would give anything to go back and have another 50. Because we've all been through some tough times, and thank goodness that farmers are seeing good times now. But anybody coming into agriculture right now, I would argue, is going to see a run that none of us have seen in our careers. I mean, it's just a fundamentally great place to be.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Carl Casale, President, CEO of Cenex Harvest States. He's about to give his presentation here at the Ag Retailers Association annual meeting in San Diego.